Hello, Nari McDiarmid with you here at Mining News Select Australia, and I'm delighted to be speaking with Paul Berend, Chief Executive with Cyclone Metals. And Paul, for people who are not familiar with your flagship project, Iron Bear, can you provide a quick overview?
Sure, I'd love to do that. So Iron Bear is essentially a large magnetite project located in the Labrador Trough, about 25 k's north of a township called Shefferville. The three key defining characteristics of Iron Bear are, A, it's got access to infrastructure. So we're 25 k's away from heavy haul rail connected to two open access iron ore export ports. Two, it's a very large deposit. We have a JORC resource of about 16 billion tons at 29.2% Fe, an exploration target which is around double that. So for all intents and purposes, this is an infinite resource. But the real defining characteristic is that it's a resource which enables us to produce incredibly high grade, incredibly pure iron ore products, which people refer to as direct reduction grade iron ore products. Our flagship product is a direct reduction concentrate, which grades 71.3% Fe and 1.2% silica. And we have produced batch samples of direct reduction pellets, which are a key component for decarbonizing the steel industry, because you need these pellets to produce essentially direct reduction steel. So that's pretty much the project from a high level. In terms of the project development, we're very privileged in that we have a strategic partner, which is Vale, which is the world's second largest producer of iron ore by volumes and the first by revenues. And Vale essentially is funding us all the way to decision to mine. So providing us with up to $138 million to get to decision to mine. There's in two tranches, and that will earn Vale up to 75% of the project. The question then becomes, what happens when they've got 75% and they've gone to decision to mine? The answer is they can either buy out the minority shareholder, Cyclone Metals, or alternatively, they can carry us to production with no dilution. Those are two very good outcomes. So that's essentially the project. So we don't actually need investors' money. So that might be a disappointment, but there is an opportunity to be exposed to the upside.
Well, Paul, one thing you touched on briefly was the de-risking process, and part of that, you've just recently announced a power study that is part of that. Can you outline the highlights and significance?
Sure. So as I said, because we're funded by Vale, we're engaged in a process of de-risking the project rather than a process of the traditional engineering studies which lead to a bankable feasibility study. So we have essentially two main de-risking studies. One is the power study we've just completed. Now, this is a really important study because power is a big component of the cost of producing magnetite concentrates. There's a lot of grinding involved, and there is an absolute requirement for us to be green. I know this word is used too often. I'm far more interested in the cost base than the greenness, but nonetheless, we've completed a study on renewable energy for the Iron Bear project. This was done by Hatch to AACE 5 standards, so independently. And we've outlined a solution to supply Iron Bear with 100% renewable energy at what is an extremely low operating cost compared to, say, the grid, compared to diesel, or pretty much any other iron ore project out there. So I'm happy to say that we'll be the cheapest and the greenest when it comes to power supply.
Well, that's a positive step forwards. So what else can investors expect to hear in the coming months?
Well, we have quite an exciting news flow moving forward. I think the next big milestone is going to be the scoping study. That should be out in the next couple of weeks. The scoping study will be the first time that the public actually will be confronted with the economics and the numbers that support the project. What are the production scenarios? And unfortunately, I will go to jail if I say anything. But you can see a silly grin on my face So things are looking pretty good from that perspective. We've also just started the pre-feasibility study, so we'll be awarding the pre-feasibility contract over the next week or two. And all of that is, of course, funded by Vale through our agreement. And that will hopefully lead to a phase 2 decision if Vale elects to take that position positively in Q1 next year. So we're moving pretty quick. To date, we've delivered all the milestones and with the budgets that we've announced. And I'll just say that the morale of the team is pretty high.
Fantastic. Finally, Paul, what do you make of Mining News Select so far?
Well, it's actually been a surprise and in a good way. A lot of these conferences are very heavy on the mining side and very light on the investor side. So there's been quite a good group of institutional investors and some of the larger broking houses. So, it's been very productive for us because we have a story to sell. And in terms of the mining companies, it's been more of a question of us looking up to these peer companies where we're usually looking down. So yeah, it's been good. I know this is a sort of a new conference, but it's way better than the other stuff out there that I've tried. But then again, I'm not a very social person.
Well, thank you for taking the time to speak, Paul. Much appreciated.
You're welcome. Thank you.